What's going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 3 of the Stick Theory podcast. Today, we're going to be joined by Longshore Lacrosse, or as you hear him call me within the video, Garrett. He's a coach at Berwick Academy up in Maine. He's technically on the south side of Maine, so some would argue he's from Massachusetts, but he's from the Northeast nonetheless. He's been stringing for over 20 years. Couldn't be more excited to have him on, and we hope you guys enjoy the episode. All right, Garrett or Longshore Lacrosse, as known by his Instagram handle, thanks for joining Stick Theory today. The question we like to start off with the most, kind of get the ball rolling for us, is how'd you come up with the name Longshore Lacrosse?
Yeah, I Longshore Lacrosse is a funny one. I live 15 minutes from the beach here in Maine. I've always wanted to do like a nautical theme or something like that. But like the sharks and like the tidal wave and the riptide and all that stuff was just kind of played out. And I was just thinking about it. And longshoremen are guys who make their living around the coast, doing whatever, whether it's fishing or mending nets or working on the docks or stuff like that. I don't do a lot of dock work, but I do a lot of manual labor around here, and I coach all over the seacoast, which is what they call eastern New Hampshire and southern Maine. Pretty much anywhere from Boston to Portland is within striking distance for me.
That is pretty cool. It's actually a pretty cool clever way to get the name. So, with
Yeah,
that, how'd you get into stringing, and like what made you want to gravitate to this side of the sport?
yeah, absolutely. So I've played lacrosse since before I can remember. I got pictures of me with a stick when I was little, and I'm older. I was born in '88, so like my first stick was the some of the catgut sticks, and it was traditional, and it was a turbo gate, all black, and that was a little bit outside of like my ability as a younger kid to kind of try and mend. So like I watched my father fix my sticks when they would break. I feel like sticks didn't break as much as they do now. They were a hardier breed back then. But then, mesh came along. I don't know, I was probably in like third or fourth grade. And I went to a sleepaway camp with a bunch of my friends from my town. And when I was little, I had so much energy that even when I went to bed, I'd get up and just like start sleepwalking. So we get to overnight camp, and my roommate's one of my good friends, and I'm just like, "Hey, Corey, like I don't know, like if I'm gonna sleepwalk tonight. Like if I do, it's all good. Like it's usually just like talking in my sleep or something." And he's like, "Well, that's scary as hell." And so I don't really like that. He's like, why don't you just keep yourself up as long as you can so like you crash out? And this is, we didn't have phones or anything in our dorms at camp then. It was just like maybe you had like a little TV with like the built-in VHS. But we didn't have any of that. And I was just like, oh, what can we do? And he's like, oh, why don't I teach you how to string? And from there I was just hooked. I loved it.
That's really cool. So, not
And
being
and,
able to
and
sleep.
I didn't sleepwalk that night.
Hey, that
Didn't
that might
sleepwalk
be
that night.
that might be the ticket right there. Hopefully you haven't been
Yeah.
sleepwalking since, but that actually is that's a very unique way for someone to figure out how to learn to string.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, do you remember the first stick you ever strung? Probably
It
long
had
ago
to have
that
been,
night, but
had to have been one of mine, and I was a defender, so I was always rocking with the Proton, the original
okay.
Proton back in the day. So I learned how to do that, and it was probably hard mesh. I just remember like really cranking on that stick to try to stretch the mesh, and I was like, I don't know what this is, and this is back in the day, so we all the stringers had their like secret method for conditioning the mesh so that it would break in. We didn't have the Lars pocket pounders back then, or we hadn't thought about it. So like I would put like shampoo and conditioner on mine and like stretch it under hot water and like roll it and pull it. And yeah, I just whatever you could to make it. I think it was probably like four side holes on the sidewall, and it was just like stretch it as far as you can, man.
Yes, technology has come a long way. It's nice that we're not having to do that anymore. Although it kind of would be fun at some of these summer tournaments to see it happen, just seeing the unique methods that would be come up with.
Yeah, I mean, like I just like by trade, like I come across like a lot of just like antique sticks. Like I'm a big play it again sports guy and see what there is to find there. And I found some gems like I'm in my office right now and I've got sticks all around me. I just found this the other day. It's a OG Excalibur with the Excalibur shaft. That's not going to focus, but it's just like this thing was mint and it was like $20, and it's
There you go.
got eight double side hole walls on it, and it's it's a relic, but it's fun to string those, and it's a nice little challenge to kind of figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. So with that first stick, you hard mesh and everything, as technology's gotten a little bit better, what's changed the most about like your process through stringing? Like how do you approach a stick now versus back then?
It's definitely the amount of uh, sidewall holes.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of anything string king. Just the endless options on that, and I like to find the sweet spot between like a good stretch to keep it nice and tight in the corners, and like not too much so that you've got room to play with the pocket, either putting it up high or stretching it down low.
Are you so with that, are you more performance focused or would you be aesthetic driven? Because obviously the more string holes kind of let you, in my opinion, do a mixture of both nowadays. But some people still like they might have what one would argue is like an ugly pocket, but it works phenomenal versus one that looks good, but you can't throw or shoot or anything with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about performance. I work with a lot of youth kids. I'm on the board of directors for my town's youth program. And like the sticks you see these kids coming in with, straight from Dick's and stuff like that, they're tough. So I'm just like, all right, give that to me. Like, let me get you strung up just with something that works. Like, don't really care how pretty it is. I take my time on stuff. So I used to be able to string sticks in like 10, 15 minutes, and now like I'm a little bit more methodical where it might take me like half hour for like a straight mesh job. Um, but it's fun to do the aesthetic stuff, and like I was kind of rigid with my style for a while, and now I just go off whatever the heads do. They kind of tell you how to string them up, especially you've got a good idea of what you like to do on the top string, and if you're paying attention, it just kind of speaks to you from there.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the biggest things I've learned too, is like, and it'll kind of take us into this next part, is like how do we approach different player position or playing styles? I feel like back in the day a little bit, it was more attackman had low pockets, okay-ish amount of whip, poles were strictly high pockets. Now you're seeing like I have a buddy I played with, he played with one would argue would be an attackman pocket on his E-pole. And like you're seeing that more and more nowadays. So like what are your thoughts on that philosophy?
Yeah, again, going back to the little guys, like you'll see them with just like a brutal pocket. So I'll come in and, midfielders are kind of like straight mid, and, some attackmen I'll go like mid low, but I'm familiar with all these kids. So like I
Hmm.
see them in practice. I'm like, oh, wow, that kid's throwing into the ground, or, this is where he keeps his hands. So, maybe we'll take a little bit of a different approach on the stringing, but it's kind of boilerplate for those kids that don't know, where they're just like, I just want something that throws. It's like, all right, you're a deep hole. Let's not crank it all the way to the second diamond row, but we'll keep it fairly high just to kind of build your form. And as they get older, they always come back and they're just like, all right, like I like this, but I want a little bit of a tweak. And they start to understand, how their mechanics translate to what the stick is. And I can just kind of tweak it off of that.
Yeah. So with that, do you think there could be such thing as like a perfect pocket, or is it going to be player to player? Like, well, youth for now. Do you think there's a perfect pocket
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
youth
there's a
player?
perfect pocket. I did it's the fastball. It's the one I just right down the middle,
Hmm.
four interlocks, and then, depending on the piece of mesh, you're kind of, or the head of the stick, you're gonna run out probably 4 to 6 holes with just straight loops, and then tie it off and make sure it's legal. But for those little guys, I think that just like the mid low, not a lot of snap, just let them go.
Yeah, that's one thing. So I help one of these groups I help coach is like our little guys. They're 34 and 35s. And like you're saying, they're showing up with like these dicks, like pre-chungs and everything. It's like we're working on
Yep.
getting them like actual sticks, but we had one today. He cut like he got a new stick from Dick. He's like, oh, he's so excited to test it out. First pass, straight to the ground. Like next passes, he's like, Coach, like what's going on? I kind of looked at it, like you'd see it. The ball is just like clipping that very bottom shooter because it's so low, the
Yep.
mesh is so soft. So I'm like, all right, so we just pulled it out, and then all of a sudden, he had a nice mid pocket, nice smooth release. And so we're trying to push a lot of these kids towards like not necessarily these custom sticks, but once they start understanding that how much a well shrunk stick will help them in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, it makes all the difference. You know, you've been around it enough where you just see the kids throwing into the ground and they're, throw the bad pass and the classic, oh, like let me punch my stick in or like pull on this shooter a little bit. And it's, just when you get that custom stringing, like you might get like a kid who looks at it real quick, but it's not like they're not using that as an excuse.
Hmm.
And I make those quick adjustments for kids on the field at like clinics and stuff, and it's, basically what I do is I just take a look. Like usually I rip out most of the shooters. Maybe I'll leave one in there and then I cinch up the bottom and give them a nice banana pocket.
Hmm.
And then it's just like, hey, come find me after practice.
Yeah, that's all you got to do for them sometimes. Just got to get it functional. So we're
Yeah.
talking about these meshes. Obviously, some break in a little bit differently. Do you have a favorite mesh right now that you like to use, or just there's a lot of good options nowadays? Back there wasn't always this many good options on the market.
Yeah, there was like 2 to 3 meshes. Like it was when the what was it, like the East Coast guys like wax mesh.
Hmm.
When I started working in a lacrosse shop out in Utah, that was like a big popular one, that waxy feel. I mean, I'm partial just to the Hero 4 and the, anything String King basically.
Hmm.
That's what I string the most. That's, I buy in bulk, so I stock that the most. Uh, so I mean, I enjoy those, but then like I'll get somebody who wants like the 6 diamond memory mesh and stuff like that, and those I really enjoy just because it's, something different. I
Hmm.
can sit there and just bust out a whole bunch of sticks that's, string king or that's hero mesh, but then you get the 6 diamond, you have to think a little bit, and you've got a little bit more limited, loop situation. So I think that those are fun just because it's a nice change up.
Mhm. Yeah, I know one of my coaches before like Mesh Dynasty had their own like big diamond meshes. A lot of my coaches they love the big diamond mesh because I think back when like hard mesh and soft mesh were a big thing, like big diamonds were
Oh
newer.
yeah,
They
when
were
when
able to
when they
get
discover when the OGs discovered like just anything that was different, it was like, oh my god, like this is the coolest thing. Like there was like the Canadian mesh like phase, and there was the micro mesh and stuff like that. Luckily, the warp mesh never took off. That was just unbelievably stupid. But I think the variety is the spice of stringing.
yeah. So obviously the mesh has to go in a head. What are some of your favorite heads on the market right now? I know one of mine personally. I haven't got my hands on it yet, but that new Warrior Evo V that just dropped, going back to the old Evo 4 face shape, it looks like one of the
Yep.
ones that's going to be very popular for the next couple years.
Yeah, I've seen, all the guys online that got the advanced look at that. Those things look sweet. I really enjoy them. Obviously, the String Kings are great.
Hmm.
I've been enjoying pretty much anything in the 1K series. And then as long as you can, get them not too pinched, the Maverick heads are good too. Um, I would say I string probably the most optics,
Hmm.
honestly.
That's the way it was for me this summer. A lot of kids like, there's like, oh, coach, I'm getting a new head. I'm like,
Oh no,
great.
no.
Like
Actually, I lied. It's ions, man. I
ions,
don't even
theirs are also
ions
good.
don't even the ions don't even register. It's just like I can knock those out so easy that I'm not even really thinking about it, and those just string up so nice.
Yeah, it is nice seeing East Coast guys kind of moving into that side of the world after starting off as that wax mesh company. Now they have arguably the most popular head on the market, and they're just dropping the Mirage 2 coming out this Friday,
Hmm.
so or Mirage
Hmm.
3, my bad.
3. Yeah.
So
I'm
try.
I got one of my guys that I string for is picking up an optic,
Hmm.
or not an optic, sorry, a magnet, and I'm looking forward to that just because I was a defenseman, so I know
Yeah.
that, the deep holes don't get a lot of love. It's either,
Hmm.
something super flimsy, or you get a brick like the tank, and it's, or the hammer, and it's anywhere in between. It's nice to get that deep hole love out there.
Yeah, so the magnet is actually I just bought one and strung it up. It's my current gamer right now for my men's league and pickup. The
Yeah.
best way I can describe it is like the stiffness of a hammer and like, but it's almost got like the pinch of like the curve where the head does this, like those ultra power
Mhm.
hyper powers. It's like those two heads had a baby and it's perfect on ground balls, nice pinch face
Yeah.
shape. I love it. It's awesome because I don't like super wide heads because I don't feel like I can get as much control as I want in
Uh,
them. So the magnet, in my opinion, does have a very good like balance of those two.
yeah, I'm interested in it. Like I played back in the day. I think I played with a Revolution, and then in college, I actually played with a Juice and
Okay,
uh, and a X10. I was a
X10.
big fan of the Excalibur. My best friend went to Syracuse, and don't know who they were sponsored with by the time, but he just went online and bought every edge that he could find, and he just played with edges because he's just like, this thing's a snow shovel, and he was knocking down passes and sucking up ground balls, and man, that thing was an absolute shelf. I don't know if you could get a pocket any higher than what he had, but I do like the wide heads. I think the advantage that they give you in picking off passes is
Hmm.
kind of marginal. And then if it's, not strung the right way, then it can be a little bit wonky. Most of those wider D heads I end up stringing to the inside,
Yeah.
just to give it a little bit more bag, a little bit more channel. And, that seems to be a hit with the guys.
Yeah. So lacrosse is also like where you're mentioning like these old heads with like the double sidewall holes. What would be
Yep.
some more innovations, whether it's mesh, heads, shafts that you think the industry could kind of still need or like that you'd like to see come out? Doesn't have to be any like specific brands, but like what are some
Yep.
general ideas you'd like to see?
I would love to see like the runners like the girls have. I'd love
Hmm.
for you to be able to get like a narrowed down piece of mesh for you to string a corner pocket or like a reverse corner pocket, just a little bit more variety in that because I string a lot of girls sticks too. And the innovation that I've seen with them,
Hmm.
they used to have like it was like the sheets of tiles
Yeah.
on those tracers, and those were brutal. And then, probably one of the things I do the most for girls players is they love that East Coast Venom strip.
Hmm.
Um, and my first like custom head, like got it as a birthday present, special dyed by the kid in town. And it was a proton with a corner pocket. And I was like, this is the best stick in the world. And I've got a real soft spot for corner pockets ever
Yeah.
since then.
That is actually cool. That's a good gift right there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, if you could design your own dream head or and mesh, what would that look like to you?
That's a good one. So, I mean, head, it would, just be able to have that variety of, whole design where you can kind of do whatever you want. And then, probably the biggest thing is just one with plastic that accepts dye better. Because you can dye, it doesn't matter if it's RIT or if it's like wax tip or anything like that. You'll just get some imperfections in the plastic where it might show, or, over time, if you didn't let it sit at the right temperature for the right amount of time, you're getting a little bit more wear like on the scoop and stuff like that. And that was my big gripe with the earlier East Coast dyes heads, where it's just like, you guys say that you're like your East Coast dyes, like, why can't I dye this? And but that's changed with the new heads and like that splatter tech that they have, that those paint jobs
Hmm.
are sick. And I think that seeing those on more sticks coming out, I think is super cool. I mean, I got a soft spot for marbled heads anyways.
Hmm.
So, just seeing that, kind of randomness in the design coming out like that, I love it.
Yeah. So obviously we mentioned you're a stringer, but you're also a dyer. What kind of drew
Mhm.
you into that side of the customization? Because some people, like me personally, I just string right now. I don't know if I'm going to step forward into this dyeing side because it just seems like so much extra to do right now. I don't know if I'm ready for it.
Yeah, it's a mess. My fiance hates when I do it because, I usually make a mess in the kitchen and we got a white stove, so I'm always cleaning up. Um, but I like it. I'm not too crazy with it. Like I don't have the Cricut or anything like that. I've got some basic vinyl decals. I've got a few, techniques that I'll use, whether it's fades or marbles or stuff like
Hmm.
that, or a combination of two. And I think for right now, that's keeping me pretty satiated. Um, But I worked at a store. I used to live out in Utah when I was coaching at Westminster University, and I worked at Tribal West Lacrosse. Shout out Fish Bartlett, and we died for like a little bit. But when you're doing it like professionally, everyone's a critic, man.
Yeah.
Everyone's a critic, and they're like, "Well, you see that little bit of bleed right there? Like this doesn't look good, and like I don't want to pay for it." And so it's just like, all right, man, like I'm not messing around with that. So like I kind of stay away from those intricate designs a little bit,
hmm
and I usually just go crazy with like the layering.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I had it was actually one of my kids that I coached. I coached one of the local high schools around here. He decided to try and dye his own head, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier. He did a good job. It looked great initially. Looked super good. Like got the fade
And then it broke
perfect.
down.
Yeah, like 2 weeks later, you see like it's streaking, the white's poking through, and it still looks good. Like you can tell what he did, but
Do, do
it's
you
not the
remember what the
same.
Do you remember what the head was?
I want to say it was one of the Mirage 2s. So hopefully it's Mirage 3, they fixed it.
Yeah, it's wild. Like I love the East Coast heads. They string up great. They're awesome. I don't really have issues dyeing like the Ion if you get like the Pro Dip or anything. But those earlier models, like I did just like a straight purple dye. And I was like, where did that white spot come from? Like, how is that even possible? It was submerged in the dye and it's still got like a little imperfection in it. It is what it is.
Yeah. So with this obviously customization, dyeing heads, stringing, we're getting a lot more bright, we're bringing back a lot more bright colors. With
Hmm.
that, lacrosse does have that growing gear culture right now where you're seeing like the sideline swaps, the eBays and everything. How do you kind of see that community evolving? Is it good for the
Oh
sport?
yeah.
I've heard some people with differing opinions. Like some people I've heard not on here or anything, just in passing, like they don't know if they're a fan of people being able to buy like these pro gloves. Like I have these that I picked up off Sideline Swap, and it's like it's a pro style glove. Like it's cool to have. Some people are just like, oh, I don't know if you should be able to get that or stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think that that's that big a deal. Like you can
hmm
go out and get the same basketball shoes that the pros are wearing, and it's like maybe you can't get like the custom colorway, but I think anything that, kind of grows the audience of lacrosse and allows sticks and equipment to get into more hands, I've got zero issue with that. And like I said, from back in the day, we used to have Great Atlantic. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not. No,
So that was have you heard of East Bay?
I have not.
Oh, Connor, come on. All right, so East Bay was like all the football cleats, all the basketball shoes, the Nike and Under Armour compression gear, and like that was super cool. But it was never like it was very rarely, probably up until the end. That's when they started bringing in like lacrosse only gear.
hmm
But it was like, oh, like you got to get these like Nike Hirachis. These are football cleats, but they work for lacrosse. And then Great Atlantic was just lacrosse equipment. So it would be probably 15 pages and you'd get it every month or every couple of months. And it would have all the heads in the front and then all the shafts and then all the gloves. And that for us as like young kid was awesome. We saw it and I don't think I ever ordered anything from that. Maybe something like really specialized like rib pads or something back in the day. But it was just like, oh, I'm gonna get this and I'm gonna get that. And it was like it was fun to look and fun to like shop. And back then, like I could tell you every stick, I'd be like, "Oh, you mean they just released the Edge Arrow or something like that?" And now, like, it's so hard to keep up. It's so
hmm
hard to keep up with all the sticks that are coming out. Instagram makes it a little bit easier, and I know the guy that runs the lacrosse shop up in Portland, and
hmm
he carries a variety of sticks. And so when I'm up there for training or something, I'll pop in and just check it out. Shout out to Scott at Lax Pros. And you see it there, but like it's not uncommon for a kid to just like bring me a stick that I'm like, I didn't even know they made these. Um, so, I'm older, so I don't really have to be on top of those
hmm
equipment pieces. But coming back to like the sideline swap and stuff, I think it's, two sides of the same coin. It's like more access to gear for people, but it's also like astronomical prices on some stuff where it's like, hey, like let's be realistic. Like this is a used stick that doesn't come with a warranty and could break. I don't know if you hid like a sidewall crack in this and didn't show the picture or
hmm
whatever. So you can get some stuff on there, and I've gotten some good gear. But I've also gotten burned on that before. I don't personally sell on sideline swap or anything. What
Hmm.
I like to do is, just kids in my town, like just gonna sell you an affordable stick.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be $150 for a custom strung head. Like that's why I go to play it against sports. Like I find these older sticks, that just need a little bit of cleaning and a restring, and I'm turning around and selling custom sticks. Oh, the dogs are going to freak out here for a second. The I take those older heads and give them some new life and turn around and sell them for like $70 for like a used stick.
Yeah.
Like, I and even if I like custom diet, like I did this one for one of my college teammates, just a old F4 and put some new mesh in it, dyed it, and he picked it up for $70. So, that's I think the most important thing is just continuing to make it accessible.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's so one thing we're trying to do. We're looking at more of down here with lacrosse growing a lot in the South. Obviously, it's more established up north, northeast, it's a northeast sport. That's where it got a lot of its starts. We're looking at these grants and everything. It's like we're looking at buying sticks for like some of these programs, and it's like for like 40 sticks, like pre-strung, it's like not great. It's like a couple $1,000s. I'm like, guys, like this is a little ridiculous. We're
Yeah,
trying to start a sport.
I just kind of, I stay away from
Yeah.
the buying those mass pre-strung sticks. If
Hmm.
we're gonna do like a larger order for youth or whatever, just get them unstrung, and I'll give up like a Sunday or something and bust out like 20 of them. I think that that's just way better. I've yet to find somebody that does like an awesome factory strung stick. Like the String Kings are pretty nice, and the East Coast dyes come nice as well, but I don't think they're pocket pounding those. So
Hmm.
even if I get those, I'm taking the shooters out and I'm running the pounder through it. So it's usually not that far off to just fix the sidewall or something as well.
Yeah. So how do you think social media has kind of changed the way stringers and brands are able to connect? Obviously, it's helped me a lot, especially with this podcast. Like I kind of just threw this idea out there on a whim, and I've already had a bunch of people reaching out, and
Mhm.
like you probably couldn't do that without the use of like an Instagram or anything. Like I made
Yeah,
one post, and then all of a sudden I have people be like, "Hey, I'm interested. I want to come on." So how do you
yeah.
think it's changed the way stringers and able to connect?
I I think it's great. We used to have to go on like GeoCities websites and stuff like that back in the day, where it's like scroll to the bottom of like a horribly made like homemade website to like figure out anything. Or, I was going to lacrosse camp and sitting in like with the stringer because there was always like that room that had the custom stringing set
Hmm.
up, and one of the best stringers around was a kid from my town. So, I'd always go watch Dave string, and it was just like asking him questions, and sometimes he was a couple years older than me, he'd tell me to piss off or stuff like that, but being able to just kind of pick his brain was awesome. And social media is just like that on steroids.
Hmm.
I think honestly one of the first stringers I probably talked to online was Lars, and
Hmm.
I just had questions, and he was super accommodating and shared a wealth of information with me. And that's kind of how it's been with everybody that I've crossed paths with on social media and the stringing community. And it's great, just even if you're not talking to them, watch the video.
Hmm.
These guys are doing crazy stuff, and most of the time I'm seeing something wild, and I've got a bucket of old heads that I mess around with and restring them every couple of years, and I'll just try those new techniques. And it's just like, wow, I really like that. Pockets by Clem, he does awesome stuff as well, is
Hmm.
super helpful. I think it's his wife or his fiance is awesome at dying, and she's
Yeah.
really responsive as well. So, I think that the community in that is awesome. I think that that's a big part of it. I think the only downfall is, people getting either like ripped off for online stringers, or, people obsessing over the views and their interaction and, growing their brand and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
I think it just comes with time. You stay consistent with it, and you kind of have like an open mind where people come to you, you got to be willing to talk to them about stringing. And all the kids in my program, we got high school kids in four leaf, and, a couple of the kids, every time I see them at training, they're coming up to me, they're like, "Oh, coach, check out this stick." And it's like, oh man, that's cool. Like, and they're like, well, how do I, what would you do differently? It's like, oh, well, why don't you move this knot a little bit further down, or,
Hmm.
change these shooters up a little bit. And then, that's getting them better. I don't really view it as competition. I don't
Yeah.
really care. Like I don't do this to like make a living off of stringing. I do it because I love lacrosse and I want to
Yeah.
help these kids out. And so like to see them get better at stringing is awesome. And it's like, I've been doing this for at least 20 years now.
Oh wow.
And, it's, you don't see it like the stringing community like growing where there's like a kid on every team that strings.
Hmm.
They go around, maybe a kid tries it out, he messes around with sticks for himself. But, I think it's still a dying art. And I think the social media is a great way to kind of keep it alive.
Hmm. I know, yeah, with the social media, obviously it is growing. Like I know, like I've seen, like I haven't got it. I'm just now getting into goalie sticks, but Lars just dropped his, I guess, new top string that he just came up with or whatever. So I can't wait to try that. He's kind of just doing stuff. I'm
He's a
like, oh my
madman.
goodness.
It's one, what is it? One of those hidden top strings?
Yeah, it's a hidden top
Yeah.
string, but it doesn't. The problem he ran into on his last one was, I think the mesh was breaking because there was too much stress. Well, he
Oh.
found a way to hide the string while also evenly distributing the pressure and everything, so the mesh will last longer.
Yeah, one of the best, depends on the top string, but one of the best pieces of advice I can give you for stringing goalie sticks is I anchor both sides. I
Okay.
don't start on the left corner and then go up and over.
Hmm.
I'll start on the left corner, I'll anchor the right corner, and then depending on what the string of it for the top string is, I've got the tension now, so you can map out the holes, or you can start in the middle and it'll disperse evenly. I think Clem's a big proponent of that, where it's, if you're not anchoring your top strings, your stick is, off center.
Hmm.
And I do that a lot, especially if I'm doing like upstate top string or something like that. I'll anchor the corners first and then maybe do a couple sidewall holes and then I'll string the top.
Okay. So you alluded to him earlier between like Lars and Clem. Are there any other stringers or I guess product developers you like admire or just, like kind of help you grow? Any special shout outs you'd want to give?
Yeah, Showtime strings or P-Show strings. I can't remember what he's going by these days. But Preston Briggs over at University of New England is a kid that I've known for a while, and we like to give each other guff about stringing. And then another young guy I'll give a shout out to is Stallion Strings. It's one of
Hmm.
the kids in our four leaf program. Johnny's a great kid, and he's one of the biggest ones that's always like, "Hey, what about this? What about this? What about this?" And to watch him grow as a stringer has been really cool.
That's awesome. So, like, what would be some advice you're given? So, obviously, like Stallion Strings, for example, he's starting out. Like, I'm sure you have, but what's some of the advice you've kind of given him as he's gotten into stringing? Like, one of the common ones that we've heard a lot is obviously you're doing this because you enjoy it, but don't let it burn you out. Because there's like the problem you run into a lot of is like you'll start stringing for yourself, and it's like, oh, I can do this for people. Then you start taking orders and orders and orders, and then you're just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So, what
Yeah,
would be some more
I w-
advice you'd give?
I would always say, don't bite off more than you can chew. Like I'm a little guilty of that sometimes. I coach at a prep school here in Maine, and I'll come home from practice sometimes, and I'll have like five sticks in my car, and it's like, all right, like I pride myself on getting the sticks out in 24 hours, so I'm gonna, sit here and string six sticks tonight. My fiance's sitting here looking at me like you're an idiot. Um, so don't bite off more than you can chew, and then be realistic about like being able to deliver. Like if it's going to be 48 hours, like let them know. If it's going to be longer, shorter, let
Hmm.
them know. And then just not being afraid to make mistakes, right? Don't be afraid to rip it out and start again. There are times where if I'm giving like a special pocket for a kid and they've got a certain request and I'll go through and it's like, oh, they wanted, mid high and I do it and I pocket pound and I look at it, I'm like, I don't love that. It could be better. I'm not afraid to just rip it out
Yeah.
and fix it. Like you can't have ego and be like, well, I would string it this way. Like they're wrong with how they want their pocket. String it how they ask. I always tell my guys free adjustments. So if they ask for something wonky and it doesn't work out, they'll come back and we'll tweak it
Mhm.
till we find what works best for them.
Yeah. All right. So with that, thank you so much for all those answers and kind of just talking through all that. The way we like to finish these out is what we call a rapid fire round. So we're just gonna you're gonna say the first thing that's gonna come to mind. Are we cool with that?
Well, yeah, can we curse on this podcast? I'm just kidding. I'll keep it clean. I'll keep it clean.
All right. It should nice. It'll be like four or five nice, easy questions. Favorite mesh.
Favorite mesh hero.
Go to knot.
Go to not special interlock.
Okay. What's the most underrated head of all time?
Most underrated head of all time's got to be the proton, man.
All right. And on the flip side, what's the most overrated head of all time? Ruffle a few feathers
Most
with this one.
most overrated head. Um, God, that's a tough one. I kind of want to say Ion just because if they offered more just solid colors and less of the clear, I think it'd be better. But I'm a big hater of stick rattles, so I feel
Hmm.
like those ions are always super squeaky, and that drives me nuts. They look sick, but I think they might be overrated just because of how popular they are.
That will definitely get some comments on. That might be a hot take, but I
Good,
don't hate
good,
it.
good. Yeah,
Uh,
that's all right.
tape or no tape?
Tape,
Tape.
tape.
All right.
Defenseman tape up to shoulder width.
Mm-hmm.
Little tape on the bottom for shooters in short sticks.
Right. And to finish out this rapid fire round, favorite head of all time to string?
Favorite head of all time to string, it's got to be the Mark II.
Mark two. Mark two
Yeah.
line's always been phenomenal, and now we're starting to get that Mark three line coming out that I'm excited for.
Yeah,
So,
I look forward to that. I had a chance to go up to Bowdoin. They've got that big String King sponsorship,
mhm.
and it's just Mark III Raws just everywhere, and those look so awesome. I'll also shout out to a guy, Harp's Head. He's
Mhm.
a Bowdoin alum, awesome stringer down in the DC area. He does great work.
That's really cool. And the one thing I'm trying to get, so we have a couple kids from Chattanooga down here who are at these schools with the String King sponsors.
Hmm.
Once the three T's and the 3D start getting prototypes, I'm trying to get them to accidentally like lose theirs. So
Yeah,
might try and get it down here. So if you ever have a connection like that, let me know. I would not mind
yeah,
getting
yeah.
my hands on one.
I would honestly reach out to String King directly.
Okay.
That's what I did, and they've been really generous
Okay.
with setting my team up with a discount. It varies by program. Like I don't get the same discount that Bowden gets, but I get one where it's nice enough where I can make it affordable for these guys
Yeah.
to get new warranty sticks without emptying the bank.
Yes, sir. I will look into that. That is good to know.
Yeah.
Well, Garrett, thank you so much for joining the Stick 30 podcast. This was awesome. Where can a lot of these listeners and viewers find your work? Obviously, your Instagram, Longshore Lacrosse, but anywhere else they can
Yeah,
find you?
just Longshore Lacrosse. I'm on the Stick Doctor Reddit a lot too.
Hmm.
So hit me up, shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to talk stringing.
All right, Garrett. Well, thanks again for joining the Stick Theory. To everyone listening, hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure we're like and comment and subscribe to kind of grow this YouTube channel a little bit, get this podcast out there more. So until next time, everyone keep stringing and just enjoy your time.
Yeah, thank you.